What is up, guys? Clay Enjoyer here, and it is time to enjoy. And in this video, I made a spooky houseplant. To start making my spooky piranha plant, I can start with an aluminum armature wire wrapped in even tinier wires to make the eventual leaves, because I wanted this piranha plant to have a little bit more detail than the original design. And then I can start by clipping the wires short because they're a little bit too long, but I thought I was being really fancy having the wires start out big and then get smaller towards the top. And to make my plant look a little bit spookier, I can push and bend some wire around this thing to make the jaws, and then I can tape it in place with a little bit of redneck engineering, before then building it up with bits of clay all around to hide the aluminum wire. With most of the clay already on the piranha plant, I can blend out the stem to make it look a little bit less bumpy and rough, even though I'm going to be adding bumpy texture later. And then I can start by building up the piranha plant head with 2 discs of aluminum foil wrapped in clay and blended into the top and the bottom. With the piranha plant's head in place, I can start by giving the piranha plant some extra clay on the sides of his mouth to hide the aluminum wire and to make it look a little bit more like a mouth. Now, I don't know if this creature is based on anything from real life, but I'm gonna give it some creepy mouth details, so don't come at me if this looks like some other animal that already exists. This is some made-up abomination anyway, and I'm gonna make it even worse. And then I can blend those random bits of clay in to make the mouth a little bit more interesting for adding the big Botox lips. And to make the lips look as quote-unquote natural as possible, I can blend them in on either side to the bottom and top to make the piranha plant look like it has some cheeks. And then I can blend those 2 Botox lips down into the base to make it look like it was just less stuck on and more like it's there on purpose. Now, with this texture roller I made off camera, I can start texturing the piranha plant like its head and its stem with this gross, bumpy texture like I had mentioned earlier. If any of you guys were curious where I got these teeth from, it was actually from the Venom Kirby video that I had made a couple weeks back. I actually had too many teeth, so this was perfect because I had just enough to make this piranha plant look extra unsettling. To make the piranha plant look even more uncomfortable, I can texture the lips with this shaper tool to make them look like they're extra cracked and dry and broken and gross. Now, with most of the piranha plant's head done, I can add on those iconic white dots, and then I can give them some ball stylus texturing and smoothing them in to the sides to make them look a little bit less like buttons and a little bit more like natural but weird growths. Now, I know I literally just added these dots on, but now I kinda hate them, so I'm gonna pull them back off and retexture the piranha plant where the dots were, because I don't think that these dots are very scary, and if anything, it makes the piranha plant look even goofier than before. Then I can do the same texturing like the head with the bumpy texture roller on stem. Now it is finally on to making the leaves. Then I can cover the tiny bits of wire with a little bit of clay. And now that I realize while editing this video, this is an incredibly inelegant solution, but the leaves are pretty big, so they kind of cover this unseen but annoying problem. Then I can cut all the divots and cracks and details into the leaf to make it look, well, like a leaf. With the leaf made, I can add it to the unglorious stem, and then I can loosely blend it in because I will fix this and bend it into a slightly better shape off camera, and then I can start with another long sheet of clay that can be rolled out and textured to add as the future vine, which is there to add some extra detail like the leaves. Now that the vine is made, I can wrap this clay hot dog around the piranha plant all willy-nilly to make it look extra random, but also to give it a little bit of better shape. Then I can also make some more, but they're going to be a tiny bit smaller because I thought this one was a little big, just to add to the slight mistakes that I've been making through this whole process. Now, with the vines in place and the plant made, I need to add a tongue, which starts, well, as a sheet of clay and an armature wire, which then can be rolled into a long strip of clay and then can be bent in an appropriate tongue alien-esque angle. And to make the clay look like a less smooth noodle, I can stab 20 billion cuts into the tongue to give it that nice and gross tongue-like texture. With a tongue made, I can set it off to the side to be baked. And I originally added flowers as a last final touch, but I decided that I didn't like them, so I took them off. Now, I can show this little contraption thing that I made, just in case the head sank too low. After the tongue was baked, I decided I hated it, so this is what I did to it. Now with that out of the way, I made a better tongue that has only a slight curve. Then I can start painting this red testicle in a nice bright red before then moving on to the mouth and the rest of the body. Next, I can paint the stem in a nice dark green before then dry brushing and painting different colors of green to give it slight variation but still make it look interesting. But with the base layer of the stem out of the way, I can then paint the lips, which I will end up having to do several times because I cannot keep paint away from the lips without getting them dirty, because I am such a clumsy painter that I constantly kept messing up and not being careful. Now I can start dry brushing the stem in that aforementioned lighter green that I mentioned earlier to bring out some of the highlights and make sure the bumps pop. Then I can do the same thing with an even lighter green on the leaves for the same effect, and then I can watch as my cat judges me from a distance. Then I can paint the stems a light green to give them some extra variation and really make them pop before dry brushing them again with an even lighter green. Then I can do an even lighter green on the leaves for the same effect as in almost the entire stem. Then I can paint the little flowers a nice bright blue and yellow for a little bit of extra pop, even though I'm going to be taking them off later. Then something unfortunate happened. The backdrop that I'm using collapsed and fell on my sculpture, snapping the piranha plant. Luckily, it's not too bad, so I can fix it up off camera and do some reddish orange dry brushing to add some highlights before adding the dots that I had mentioned earlier in the start of the video. Now with most of the piranha plant finished, I can now paint his mouth with a nice pink eraser color before coloring his tongue with the same pink. And like I had mentioned earlier with the lips, I did end up getting some pink paint on the mouth, so I'm going to have to touch that up again, but I'm going to do that after I do another dry brushing of pink on the end to make it have a gross gradient that is really barely noticeable inside the mouth, but it's more of like a proof of concept, if you know what I mean. Then I can dry brush the rest of the tongue with that same red to bring out all the sharp textures, and then like I mentioned earlier, I can touch up the lips again because I was being careless when painting. To finish off the mouth, I can clean up the teeth a little bit with a little bit of white paint, and then I can dry brush some light gray on the lips of the piranha plant. And I know this would technically count as me messing the lips up, but I wanted it to add like shading and some texture. Then I can dirty up the teeth to make them look a little less clean, because last time I checked, piranha plants can't brush their teeth. Now I can apply some Mod Podge to the tongue to make it look extra slobbery and shiny before adding some more hot glue to make it look extra disgusting. Now, if the tongue is horrible and then the mouth is like only kinda horrible, it makes sense that I'm gonna need to make the mouth horrible to match the tongue. So I'm gonna absolutely slather the mouth with that more hot glue to make it look like an extra slobbery, disgusting mess. Finally, the last step to finishing the mouth, I can take some glue and red paint and mix it together to make it look like thick blood that I can then smear all over the Piranha Plant's face, kind of like it was trying to apply makeup. And then, I hated the flowers, so I decided to chop them off camera, and now I'm trying to fix it to make it look like it was intentional. Now it's time to make a base. But I wanted to do something a little bit different. So in art class a while back, we were doing pottery, and I made this pot, which I realized it kind of looks like a pipe. I know it doesn't, just work with me here. But I was going to use it instead of making a normal pipe to make it look a little bit more interesting. After I glued the Piranha Plant in place, I can start mixing up a potion of different things, starting with Mod Podge, brown paints, and some sand, which will make the dirt, which is going to go inside the pot to cover up the gross aluminum foil. Now with my dirt potion made, I can spread it all around the base and making sure to be as careful as possible. With all the dirt spread out, I can now take a popsicle stick and start poking and prodding the dirt to try and give it more interesting shape and to drag some up onto the plant to make it look like the plant is coming out of the ground instead of just sitting there. And even though it's still wet, it doesn't really do its job, but in probably the next clip, it's now dried, so I can break it and crack it, and then mix it around a bit more, and then it'll give a more accurate shape and texture. Then off camera, I dry brushed the dirt to give it a little bit more detail, and then I can make a Mario hat on the side, because I think this plant is looking a little lonely, which starts as an aluminum foil potato wrapped in clay, and then it gets a little bit extra clay on one of the sides to make the front bulgy part of the hat, before then getting it smoothed and shaped before it eventually is going to get banged up and nicked and worse for wear. Then I can add the brim on. Now it's time for that aforementioned breaking and destroying. I can use this tool because it has a scoop and a scratcher, so I can make deep cuts and shallow cuts of varying sizes and degrees all over the hat to make it look incredibly well worn and like, well, he was just digested. I won't say who, but I imagine that you guys can figure it out. And then I had so much fun with this. I went a little bit ham, obviously. And again, I think I went too far, but it's okay, because it makes it extra detailed, I guess. Then I can start by painting it red to show whose hat this is, and then dry brushing it in a lighter red. With the dry brushing all done, I can now give Mario's hat the white patch and very carefully write the M in a Posca pen, because I think it's a little bit firmer than a paintbrush, and it looks a little bit smoother too. Unfortunately, in this sculpture, it's going to be implied that this Piranha Plant ate Mario, so I'm going to need to dust the hat with some dark browns, blending it up slightly so that it looks like it's resting in the mud instead of submerged into the mud. And then I can put it in place and angle it how I want it to, and then I can get some blood like I had mentioned earlier for the Piranha Plant, and I can stipple it under the Piranha Plant, around the pot, and on Mario's hat to act as a little bit of a cheap glue. Then I can show the angles of the blood, and now it's time for the final reveal. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe for more videos that no one asked for but are still cool. Alright, see you next time.